The following broadcast is a Nighthawk Network presentation. Coming to you live from the Motor City of Detroit, this is Get Off My Lawn Live with your host, Eric Buckner. Brought to you by the Nighthawk Network. Nighthawk Network. Our voices for our people. Good evening, everybody. What's going on? It's your boy, Eric Buckner. And this, my friends, is the final episode of Get Off This Lawn Live. Coming to you live and direct, as always, from my beautiful hometown of Detroit, Michigan. What is going on, everybody? It is good to see you. For those of you who have been keeping up with my Facebook page, you know I have not been feeling 100% these last couple days, but I think I'm well enough to go ahead and finish off what I started here. So we are definitely going to get into it and discuss a few things, talk about the show and how it started, why it's ending, and most importantly, what happens next. So that is what we'll be talking about on this, the last episode to Get Off This Lawn Live. As you know, this all started a few years ago in the midst of this thing we call pandemic. Now, sadly, we are still contending with this to some degree. I'm sure some of you have pretty much decided you have moved on. COVID has not affected your life. So thusly, it is not affecting your life at this point. But I definitely say that COVID is definitely a key part to the story because it gave me the opportunity when we were all on lockdown to reflect and to figure out what direction my life was going in terms of what to do next, which is how this all started. Now, keep in mind, for many years, I had wanted to do a podcast. Sorry, I'm fixing the lights here. There we go. I had wanted to do a podcast. It was always something I was interested in. Keep in mind that I was a major in journalism and telecommunication and films at Eastern Michigan University. Congratulations to them, by the way, for winning their second bowl game ever this afternoon. Good job. Go EMU. Go Eagles, or go Hurons, because they were both during the time I was in school. So there's that. But anyway, I always was interested more of beyond and behind the camera stuff as opposed to in front of. But the opportunity started to call itself when I was invited on a podcast that was done by one Niecy Daniels, also known as Nicole Gilbert to some of us. Shout out to her to help inspire some of what has happened here. But I went on that show and I felt like I had a voice, not much of one that particular day, but it did encourage me to think, maybe I could do this. So thusly, from that came Get Off My Lawn, which of course, as many of you know, started as initially an audio podcast that I was streaming. And let me see. Of course, I started to initially go back to old episodes and pull some clips and whatnot. Kind of decided against that because, one, I definitely want to encourage you all to go back and check some of those previous episodes if you so would, in this day of followers and likes and whatnot. All that helps. You can find many of the video episodes on my YouTube page, which is Eric Buckner, Nighthawk Network, Detroit. But you can also find the audio podcast on Spotify or Apple or Google Podcasts if you choose to look for them. We got Big B shaking it. Yes, we were on that same show. Hey, Niecy Daniels. Yes, definitely a big part of this story comes into play with this brother known as Demetrius Dennis Taylor, also known as Big Meech, Big Stu. and a variety of other names to many of us, but most definitely, most importantly, as family and friend to me. So shout out to you, Big Meech. Appreciate you for checking in. What eventually happens is after doing the audio podcast, and I got some decent reviews from it. Definitely were encouraged by some of my friends and family, in particular people like my aunt. Shout out to her, Aunt Beverly, and to my dear friend who I lost during the pandemic. We'll talk a little bit about her a bit later. But it encouraged me to say, hey, maybe I will try this in a video format. So sure enough, after spending some quality time learning the technology, part of it from people like my good friend here, Mr. Taylor, and from a couple others who helped me along the way. Shout out to people like we'll have to call her CPS because she is a person that does not like to be acknowledged in social media, but you know who you are. My good friend CPS, you know who you are. But people like that who help me out with certain things that helped me to start to do this thing called video podcast. So as a result, started the podcast and went on to do over a couple hundred episodes of just my own podcast. That's not even counting the help that I've given to others in these last couple of years, creating their own content and podcast as well. There are some of you out there that I want to talk about specifically a little bit later in the show, but definitely were inspired and helped, and definitely was glad to help you do your thing. Some of you have achieved success. Some of you have decided to no longer be involved, such as life. Some people are here for a reason. Some people here for a season. So that's part of what that's about. What happens is I start to look at things in my life and I say, I think I have some good quality opinions to offer. Something that might be slightly different than some of those that I've heard, some of those I've seen in other podcasts. So I decided to go ahead and put my thoughts out here for public consumption and see what people thought about it. In an ideal world, I expect this to be a major podcast and national and all of that. Not really. Honestly, no. The crazy part about it is, in me ending this podcast today, I've probably got better numbers in the last 6 months than I had in all the couple years prior to it. Crazy as that sounds to me. Because, nowadays we don't have the time that we had to devote to watching things and checking in that we did during the pandemic. So it's kind of crazy that I look back at some of the numbers now and there are more people watching or at least checking in than they have in the past. I appreciate all of you all the same. Thank you very much. The Nighthawk Network has definitely grown since the start of the podcast. When I started the Nighthawk Network information page, for those of you who are familiar, I started with about maybe 20 people. That has ballooned to a good 200 something plus, not to mention some of the people that I just may have not added, but they do have access to the page for whatever reason. Shout out to you guys as well. Not quite as big a following on YouTube. I think partially that's my fault for not pushing that. But also, there's just so much content on YouTube in particular. It's kind of hard to just go for it like that. They have the different programs and different little cheat codes and all that. Just never had the time to sit down and work all that out. Perhaps in the future, that's something I'll look into. But all in all, it's been a good run. So you're asking, okay, since you've enjoyed it so much, since the numbers are as good as they ever have been, why have you chosen now to step aside from this particular podcast? Understand the people that I do other podcasts, and particularly the one known as Game Time Audible, and that podcast will continue, my sports podcast. We will, in fact, be on tomorrow, though after tomorrow we will be taking a holiday hiatus. But no, I am not stepping down and saying I'm done with podcasting. I'm done with Nighthawk Network. I'm basically rebranding and recommitting to other parts of it, as I will explain a little bit further in the show. But I will say my podcast did not turn out the way I intended. And it may have been the best thing that ever happened to me in my older life. Let me explain. Now, when we first started doing the podcast, the major two issues that we had in the world were oftentimes what we talked about. That being the battle with COVID-19 and the battle with our government at that time, in particular, one former president who I still to this day do not like to proclaim by name. But some of you have heard me call him the Orange Clown, among other things. Y'all know who I'm talking about. But mainly, those were our two most popular subjects on the podcast. I do believe that chased a lot of my initial audience away. As we continue to talk about that week after week after week, that was not my initial intentions going into this podcast. It just kind of turned out that way. And some of you basically got to saying that, yeah, you are the person that I go to find out my information about COVID-19 and about the president and politics and whatnot. It was just one of the things I was interested in at the time, but it seemed to be things that I learned and I researched that other people chose not to look into. They basically kind of looked for me to talk about it, and then they went and looked into it from there. It would be nice if I was sitting here today saying that COVID is over and we no longer have to be concerned about it. It's definitely a lot easier to contend with. I mean, it's nice that, okay, when I did get sick the other day, I had the means to go and say, okay, let me go make sure it's not COVID, and found out instantly, as opposed to those times where basically it was hard to get testing. It was hard to even set up appointments to get tested. There was no real significant treatments for it at that point. The hospitals were full. It was just a whole different space and time at that point. It was really scary because people were dropping like flies. When I sit back and look at where we are today as opposed to now, I just thought about that and listening to a couple of shows. I've lost two very close friends, three people that at one point I was involved with, not necessarily from COVID-19, just in general, including the last person I was involved with. I've lost a couple co-workers along the way. I've lost a couple former bosses. I've lost family members. I've lost schoolmates. This is just me personally. And I must admit, it did weigh heavy on me. At times, a little more than even I was willing to admit. So I think part of what my podcast also helped with was helping us all learn to cope together in some way, shape, or form. It gave us the opportunity to kind of communicate on that level about it. Keeping in mind that as I'm looking at my dear friend Demetrius here, knowing just the type of loss that he has experienced, because with just what I listed, take his life and times it times 5. That's the type of loss he's experienced in the same amount of time. So it is good that we have each other to go back and forth with so that we can lean on each other for strength and comfort during these troubled times. Another thing is, thank God that our government is a little bit more stable than it was during the times of the first podcast. It was just a huge concern of mine at that time that we were not going to be able to work this thing out and that we would be stuck with 4 more years of the foolishness that had become the previous administration, although there are still big footprints all over what he has done even to this day. As we talked about yesterday, the big story coming out of Washington, the fact that the committee, the January 6th committee, has put in suggestions to indict one former president based on several different things. But these are simply suggestions, and then the Department of Justice have to determine if they want to follow those suggestions and move forward. It is sad that one of the Republican people in Congress came on and said, well, thank you guys for wasting the public's money in regards to this whole situation. Let us all move forward. Because I'm sure that's how many of them feel. I'm actually sure that that's how many of the Democrats feel, because at this point, unless you're going to do the right thing in my eyes, based on what I've seen, and bring this man in for questioning, lock him up for a minute, have a trial. That's all that's going to actually happen. And honestly, I don't feel that it will. And I'm not alone in that. I'm sure most of America feels that way. All this was for naught. In the end, you're not going to indict a former president for anything, particularly that guy. But when all is said and done, at least there were people like myself willing to put the information out there and for you to judge. And based on what we have learned, that led to us having different leadership. Because I think if we had just depended on the mainstream media, or if many of us watch more Fox News than now, or whatever the case may be, we'd be in a different state of affairs right now. That being said, we're in a different place in this world, but it's not necessarily a good place. There are some people that have made out quite well during the time that my show aired initially in the summer of 2020 up until this point now. People in my own life who basically have went on and done many great things during that time. Shout out to some of those folks who will go unnamed, but you know who you are. You are doing well, a lot better than you did previously. Your lives have reached a different level, and I'm very proud of what you have accomplished. But then there were those of you who, based on my opinions during the show, you have chosen to kind of step away from being part of my life, or I have in turn chosen to step away from being part of your lives. I've learned quite a few things about some of you just based on some of your opinions on my show, some of which you expressed on the show, some outside of the platform, that led me to know that you are not the people that I thought you were. So I'm actually thankful for that, because there's a couple people in my life that I really depended heavily on, and just based on some of what has happened and how you have dealt with it, I learned that maybe you were not quite ready to move on forward to the next part of my existence. There's going to be a lot of thank yous that go on probably the next 20 minutes or so to like several people along the way. First and foremost, I do want to thank one Demetrius Dennis Taylor and one Bell Maurice Hayes. Those are two of the three of the hosts of Dish and Tea over there in the Dish and Tea Network. Shout out to you guys. Because of you, this has become possible. I don't think I moved forward, at least even if I did, it would not be to the extent that it became if not for you guys and that faithful day on your show, Big Meech, when you, and may specifically Mr. Hayes, predicted that I would have a show that would cross multiple platforms and be seen in different areas, and I would do different types of shows from it. From that, this version of the Nighthawk Network was born. Another person I definitely have to thank is, of course, my very, very missed friend, the one who we honored last week, one Derek Smith, who also is known as the Great Helena Hologram. This show definitely would not have been what it was without her and her contributions, both on and off the air. So definitely have to thank her, and again, miss her every single day. I'm sure this will kind of be a mixed emotion day for her, knowing that I've come to this conclusion about this particular show, but still will be happy for what I will announce later on. Like I said, there were many people during this time that influenced the show, that were part of the show, that basically weren't part of the show. Just some of their actions helped to encourage what went on here. I want to shout out to some of my family members who basically, I often talked about some of their actions, particularly during the pandemic, but it caused me, because I was more concerned than just hating on them, as some of them may have felt, that I looked into some of the things that I looked into, particularly when it came to pandemic and traveling and things of that nature. Fortunately, most of them are still with us, and in the end, they did their thing, and I suppose they had fun during the times they were out and about. So shout out to you guys. We got me checking in again. Hold on. Okay. Mita saying, indeed, I pushed you to get in front of the camera to cut your chops. Red made sure you kept your voice active. And Nikki made sure you stayed engaged so you can always be relevant. And I appreciate every last one of you for that. Like I said, there were other people involved in the process behind the scenes. I want to thank them. There's my good friend in Missouri. You know who you are. Oftentimes early on during the initial broadcast, you check on me to see how things were going. You checked on me in general. We kind of have not been in touch as much these last several months, but you are in my thoughts and in my prayers, particularly as that big storm is bearing down on all of us this weekend. Please be careful, y'all. But I thank you for your contributions to the show in terms of the topics, in terms of the encouragement, in terms of just checking in with me every day and saying, hey, how's it going? Leaving a couple encouraging morning memes or what have you. I know we've kind of stopped doing that, but not forgotten. Do want you to know that. I definitely want to check in with my old high school friend. You know who you are. You definitely encouraged me a lot in those early days as well. Like I said, you are not basically a social media person, but you are social media savvy. If you chose to do this, I think you could have a successful podcast yourself. But you definitely encouraged me along the way in terms of what I was doing, in terms of just not concentrate so much of what I look like on the air. And keep in mind, for the record, I'm still kind of iffy about that to this day, though I've gotten inboxes that will indicate that apparently I don't look too bad on air. Lord knows I was surprised by a couple of things I didn't got over the years, but nonetheless, there's that. I want to thank the people on some of the other social media platforms that this show ended up finding itself on. Keep in mind, there were a few episodes that got broadcasted live on Instagram, so I want to thank some of my Instagram followers. There were definitely several episodes that got broadcasted live on places like Bigo Live and Pacocha and things of that nature. I definitely want to thank all of those people who I met along the way during the process of this show and during the pandemic. Some of you I've lost touch with. Some of you are still part of my existence because I follow you on Snapchat or Instagram or even on your Facebook pages. So definitely shout outs to you guys. There are a couple people that came on the show. For example, Fierce Mama, who seems to be doing quite well over there in Canada as a spokesperson, a model, a singer, and such. Shout out to you. Thank you for doing the show. The one time you did it, definitely got good reviews. Glad you are continuing to do well. Keep up the good work. Shout out to Shy Glow Hard, Miss Shyly. You know who you are. Definitely want to thank you for your contributions both on this show and on the After Dark edition for your appearance there. Definitely appreciate that. You were very key in some of my decision making early on in the show, and you definitely inspired me. You being probably the most popular person that I know in terms of your hustle and your heart. I know you go through some things just like I do, but keep grinding. I definitely see you working. It may not always be things you necessarily want to do, but you are definitely willing to do what you have to do to get things done. And I very much appreciate that. I definitely want to thank some of the other people who were guests on the show. People like the teachers, one Miss Dana Brown and one Miss Latrice Dawkins and her friends who came on the show to talk about what they were going through in the teaching experience during the pandemic. I know that things have gotten a little better for you guys, but not to a great degree. I definitely hope that once pandemic is truly died down to a very small portion, that educators are not forgotten about. They were very key in getting us through this, whether it was online or when we first started back. They are definitely going through a lot right now. Keep in mind, many of our children are still behind in terms of their overall learning, particularly with the reading and the math. So parents, if you have a little extra time to put in a little extra work with your kids, I'm sure your teaching counterparts would appreciate. Because keep in mind, you guys are in cooperation together in terms of helping to raise your child. I think in this day and age, there are 4 things that raise the child. There are the parents. There are the educators. There are the outside influence of parent number 3, good old telephone. And of course, there are the people that grow up around them, their environment, their village, if they will. And you put all those 4 things together, if they are all working in cooperation, you come with a person that is very well rounded and ready to take on the world. If you come with people and they all on different pages, there's no telling what your child's thought process may eventually be. So these are things you definitely have to consider along the way. And those are definitely some of the conversations that we need to have as people that I'm very proud that we brought up on the show and that we talked about in depth and that a lot of good dialogue was had. Another thing that I'm thankful for, that there were not a lot of controversy in terms of this show. I know some people, in terms of doing a podcast, their thought process was, okay, let's do something or say something that's going to go mega viral and get me all these likes. That was never my intention with doing a show. I did want to have a decent number of followers on the show, but I never set out to be like, okay, I'm going to say this and let's set the internet on fire. That is not my life, so that was definitely not my show. In the ideal world, there's been maybe 3 or 4 people that recognize me from doing any of my my internet work. It was kind of interesting when it happened, but there's that. I have no great desire to be mega famous or anything like that. I definitely feel for people like Kim Kardashian and Cardi B and all those folks who basically can't go outside now without somebody sticking a camera or a microphone in their face and wondering what they doing today. When some days you don't want to be famous, you just want to be you. So I'm fortunate that I'm able to do this and still just be me. I don't know if I would feel the same about it if the show got to a point where I got this mega popularity and now all of a sudden everybody knows my name and wants to know my life and all of that. I don't think I ever have been that type of person. I don't think I will ever be comfortable being that type of person. But for some reason, I do feel it necessary still to come out and have my say-so in regards to certain things that's going on in this life and in the world in general. So we definitely will be moving forward in terms of podcasting. It just is going to be a little different. And I said, I'll talk about that a little bit more near the end of the show. So while we're rolling here, let me drink a little water. And what I will do is play a few of these commercials because I definitely want to talk about them when we get back. And also, if anybody is out there, you have the link. You want to just pop in for a minute to say one last, hey, I'm okay with that. Anybody in the comments, if you just want to check on in and say what the show meant to you or what it didn't mean, if you're happy it's leaving, if you don't care, whatever the case may be, feel free to express those comments as well. This is the final episode of Get Off This Lawn that I've noted as the final mode. And these are the commercials. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more, dish out a few more thank yous, and then let you know for sure what the future of this, the Nighthawk Network, has in store for you and the people that it loves. So that being said, we shall be back.
We're not asking for your permission. We're not seeking your approval. We're claiming what's ours in the name of our ancestors. We are their answered prayers. This is more than a movement. This is a revolution. Black innocence. What are yours today?
Hey, bitches. Wait a minute, hold on, Miss Hologram. Hold on. Yeah, it's about that time, but it's about that time for the remix with your boy Derek. Let's talk about it.
Coming to you live from the iconic city of Baltimore. This is Hey Bitches, the remix with your boy Derek, part of the Nighthawk Network. Nighthawk Network, our voices for our people. And now here.
Nikki. Let's talk. Let's talk.
Nighthawk Network presents Pastor Sean Love. Pastor Sean Love, devoted father and husband, a residing pastor at the River Rouge Bible Assembly in River Rouge, Michigan. Join him as he gives us messages from God's Word, Bible study.
Who said that you can win? And who?
The views and opinions expressed here on Get Off My Lawn Live are those of the host or his guests and do not necessarily reflect those of the Nighthawk Network or its associates. Viewer and listening discretion is advised. All right, we are back. This is Get Off This Lawn Live, the final the series finale of my podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. I know you're wondering, some of those commercials, we didn't play them all the way. That was kind of by design, one, because having some technical difficulties. That is part of the life of the small-time podcaster. It's kind of par for the course. So there's that. And two, I just kind of wanted a couple of them just so you can get a taste of them. Definitely going to have a discussion with that. We got Will checking in. It was good seeing you, bro. Nice 2-3 year run. I appreciate that, Will. Thank you very much. You definitely were also a factor in some of what went on here. You were one of the several guests that we had during this time. So thank you for checking in. I appreciate your input. You being a broadcaster and a producer yourself, some of the suggestions that you had definitely were helpful. So thank you for that. Good people, here's what it boils down to. There was a lot of good things to talk about along the way. And I was fortunate that I found several good people to talk about them with and to and bring them on the air. No problem. You are very well. Thank you for that, Will. I was fortunate that there are a lot of people in my circle that had some quality opinions to bring to you that when they came on the air, they were not an embarrassment. They were not somebody, for the most part, I was like, why on earth would you put them on your show? There was not much of that at all. There were a lot of people where it'd be like, okay, yeah, I definitely like what that person had to say. What are they doing? Do they have a show? They should have a show. There were some of those along the way. We got Pride checking in. Mr. Pride Hunter, what up, though, Sensei? Here showing that love, my brother. I appreciate that. Definitely shout out to people like Pride, who one faithful day brought to me by my younger sibling and said, yeah, this man is interested in doing a podcast. I felt like you were someone that he could talk to in regards to it. So even though we have yet to bring you that podcast, Mr. Hunter, I'm hopeful that somewhere down the line, those are discussions that we can have along the way to where we do get you on the air. You do have some very interesting opinions in regards to several things. And I feel like people would definitely benefit from hearing them. So I do want to continue to encourage you to find some type of pathway to bring yourself into the podcasting. And of course, I am definitely here to help you in any way that I can, sir. Another thing that I liked about doing this show was that we definitely did talk about stuff that we did not always see in the mainstream media. We talked about we talked a lot about the kids. In fact, those are something that I often think about, even though I am not a parent. I do definitely sympathize with those of you who are. People just do not understand the kind of work and effort that goes into properly raising a child in this day and age. Just the thought processes that must go into it, the fact that you have so many other outside influences going on in terms of raising your child. And the idea where if your child would just sit and listen to you and you alone, it would probably be a lot easier to raise said child than having to go back behind other things, other systems, and try your best to explain why they're saying this as opposed to what you are saying. It is, kids, they just basically are programmed differently in this day and age. Part of it is because they have that third parent, the good old babysitter known as phone. And they can look up things in real time about some of the things that goes on in their world and don't necessarily have to access you or someone else in terms of what's being talked about. There are the influence that go on when they leave your presence and go into the school or even into their job or what have you, that you have to contend with as well. In the ideal world, your main job as parent is to try your best to raise your child to be self-sufficient and self-thinking and be able to cope on all levels. Some of our parents, that was their intentions as well. They did good, some of them not so good. Even to this day, I struggle with how we were raised to some degree in this particular household. But when all is said and done, you at least want to know that somebody cares, that there are people in your village, as we like to call it in the network, that you can go to and get some helpful advice or help to guide you in the way that you should go, or help you just get some better understanding as to what needs to be done to make certain things happen. Keep in mind, as people of color, we are not always privy to how the world truly works. There are not many programs that sit down and explain these things like credit or mortgages or credit card debts, business credit as opposed to not business credit, even proper health care and all of that. There are not a lot of people among us that understand that, and even less of them that are willing to put forth that type of information and help you along with it. We did bring you some of those type of people on the air, or at least access to some of them. I was always wanting to encourage people to do their research so that if you needed some resources, we would at least give you some type of pathway to try to find what you needed in order to get things done. Even now, I'm still learning some of that for myself in terms of trying to help my own situations. So I completely get that. There are some people who basically just flat out disagree with something that I said along the way. I take Will Muhammad, for example. We had our differences of opinions on some of the things I said on the show, but I always felt like he respected what I had to say and vice versa. So I was thankful for that. I always encourage people when you put your comments that, yes, have your comments, but put them respectfully. Of course, we had a couple knuckleheads that would chime in every now and then. We have our Instagram and internet bullies that basically just want to use this platform to hurt and demean and whatnot. Definitely, those are things that we were mindful of. Some of those things, in fact, we didn't even put in the actual comments. I see them. So yes, I acknowledge you haters, as we do on the ending of the credits. But in the end, we don't have time for your foolishness. Save that for your own platforms. We got Hugh checking into the program. What's good, E? My sinuses are killing me. I'll be getting with you tomorrow, guys. Will, amen. That, of course, is my co-host over there on the show known as Game Time Audible, and also one of my very best friends. So very thankful he had time to check in. We both been a little bit under the weather these last few days. So yeah, I understand, Hugh. We're gonna work it out, my friend. We hanging in there. But we both definitely enjoy doing these things called podcasts and bringing our opinions to you. So I am thankful that I have him to do that. I'm thankful for all of you that's tuning in right now and basically checking out what I got to say on this final episode. So the big question I guess we got to answer before we head out is, why end it now? Why was this the time to call it a day for Get Off This Long. Well, remember, in my thought process, I go back to the one commercial that I often show where I'm sitting here at the computer, but in my mind, I'm kind of thinking like I'm sitting on the porch and there's this kid on the porch that I'm talking to, and these couple other kids that's kind of on the lawn of the house where I stay. And I'm talking to these kids as if to say, okay, this is what's going on in the world. Y'all really need to start paying attention because I don't think you fully are. I think you are living in a dream world where it's all cookies and creams and candy when this is what's going on. And then there's the one kid that basically is not paying attention. They just around because everybody else is around and they really not getting what you're trying to say. That was the person that I really wanted to affect with this show. The person who basically, after listening for a few minutes, saying, hey, what he's saying kind of makes sense. Maybe I should look at this thing a little differently. I think this is Pride checking in again. He is saying, I am hoping that this is going to be like a wrestling swerve and that you are ending the show, yet creating a new show. Like a loser leaves town match, yet you come back with a new gimmick and mask on, son. Well, we definitely will discuss that near the end of the show, my friend. I would definitely tell you, no, I'm not done podcasting. I am not feeling like I'm being run off the air or anything like that. What I'm telling you is the purpose of this particular show, I think, has ran its course. I think we've reached that one or two kids that was on the lawn that kind of didn't have a clue, but now they have a little bit of a better one. And they've used that knowledge to kind of ask better questions and gain better answers. One of the things that I've come to realize is that a lot of the topics that I talked about on the show, it really didn't benefit many of you as much as it would have benefited those around you. Those who we really need to say, okay, look, he's talking about this politic thing. You kind of want to get an understanding of how this works if you don't have one. Sit down and kind of watch this, and then let's talk. Those types of things. It really would have been nice if at some point I could have had some younger people on the show to kind of gain a better understanding of their opinions of what was going on. There is a young lady and Miss B. I won't put your name out there, but you definitely know who you are. I really, really want to strongly encourage you in 2023 to finally put your opinions out here on the air. You have talked about it several times on your Facebook page. I really and truly feel like you would be very awesome at this thing. Some of your opinions, I really would like to have an understanding thereof, because you come out and you say them, it's like, is she serious? Why does she think that? Where is this coming from? Because I grew up around some of the people that helped to raise and formulate you, I really am interested to see where your experience in life in this city known as the D brought you to some of the thought processes that you had. So again, I would like to strongly encourage you to come out with your podcast next year. And as always, my peoples, I am definitely willing and able to help you in any way that I can, because I really think you'd be good at it. I truly do. That being said, I felt like, yeah, it's time to shut this part of it down. There's only so many conversations about the kids and COVID and such that we can have without just basically revisiting the same stuff over and over again. I go back to last week when Stan Mason briefly checked into the show, and he basically pointed out that the reason why he stopped doing his podcast, if you've been looking for it, the Behind the Blue Curtain, you notice that it's no longer been on the Nighthawk Network because it is no longer a show. He basically expressed to me and the audience that he's pretty much said all he had to say in regards to policing at this point, and that there was no need to keep revisiting and going around in circles about the whole thing. It pretty much has served its purpose, and it was time to move on to other things. So that is why he chose to stop doing his show. Will he be back on the air broadcasting and stuff? Who knows? I encourage Stan, because he is a person with many quality opinions, just not his former job, to find some platform to bring his opinions out. As always, in the future, if you want to collaborate on something and we can make the time and things work, I definitely would be interested in doing that with you, sir, along with anybody else that was on your team that was a part of the show at some point. I want to send a shout out to people like LaRonda Young. Yes, Dr. LaRonda Young, who during the time of my show left the show known as Beyond the Blue Curtain to spend more quality time to getting her doctorate degree. She has moved on and are doing things in terms of education. And I'm definitely proud of her. And I was definitely inspired by her story because in life you can pivot and look to do things differently and basically learn that you are better at something else than you were at other things. When you look at some of the things I talked about in terms of my life, you know that I have had several different things that I've done in terms of a job over the years. You know, I was not just a cook or just a person that studied education or the variety of other little smaller jobs that I had along the way. I basically always have had interested in a variety of different topics and subjects. And part of doing this helped to encourage some of that. So keep in mind on my time off the air that I pretty much rebrand this whole thing called Nighthawk Network. Those are some of the things I'll be looking into. But when all is said and done, we got to keep it moving. So even though that purpose has been served, and again, I encourage you to always go back and look on my YouTube page. All those shows will be on there for as long as they allow them to be on there. So if you want to revisit some of those conversations, by all means do so. Go back through the audio podcast. You can do those as well. But I think it's time for a new and different spin on some of this stuff. So you want to know what happens now. Here's what happens now, people. What happens now is after we do this last episode. All right, hold on. We got me checking in. Stan Mason was being prepped to move into his current job. Behind the Blue Curtain allowed him to show his true self and to show that he was genuine. He's now in a new career, and his podcast was a springboard into it. And I think that is the case for several of us in the network. Like I said, I just mentioned Dr. LaRonda Young, who got her doctor's degree during the time of my show. So, you know, not necessarily on the show, but, you know, just, during the time that I was doing a show. I think about my cousin, Dr. Marla Facey, who also got her doctorate during this time. People that are in, well, let's just say they have a particular age. People that don't necessarily look to do those types of things at that age, but definitely was strongly encouraged by what they chose to accomplish during that time. Even you, Big Meech, have done several things during this time. You are now more involved in your local government over there in College Park. Got buildings with your name on it. Go to council meetings and such. Taking an interest in sports. Those types of things. You have definitely evolved as a person. So shout out to you. Speaking of said person, there is Mr. Stan Mason. What's going on, Stan? We are just talking about some thank yous. Want to thank you for some of your words of encouragement over this time of me doing the show. Definitely was good to hear from you from time to time when you call and let me know what was going on and some of your thoughts on the broadcasting we were doing over here at the network and so on and so forth. So thank you for that friendly advice, my friend, my brother. But again, you want to know, what are we going to do now? Here's the thing. Basically, we're going to take the holidays off to kind of get some extra rest and figure some things out in the actual household itself, in the studio, reconfigure some things. I think we definitely can work out some configurations to where the yard, known as the stream yard, will work a little better. I think part of the technical difficulties that I have from time to time is just basically how I have things set up here. So I want to try a different setup for one. Two, I kind of want to dig into some of my other interests. For example, one of the things I wanted to do on Get Off My Lawn was some of the things that actually get done on things on Dish and T, where they not only discuss the current events of the day, but they actually dealing to a little bit of entertainment news and things of that nature. I do want to do a podcast specifically for that because I do have a very big interest in celebrity news and whatnot. I may have a little different spin on it than some of you do. I mean, I do always keep in mind that our celebrities are people that we inspire to be or be like or live that lifestyle are actually human beings. Many of them grew up much like us and just one day found themselves in the spotlight. So I kind of want to take my own little spins on that. So there will be a podcast that deals with entertainment news at some point. I still have interest in politics and things of that nature. I think that show may be something that I do and I find a smaller space. One of the major criticisms for this show and some of the shows in the network is that sometimes when we talk about these things, they go on for a long period of time. They talk about, I was watching one show and y'all was on for like 4-5 hours. Now keep in mind, depending on the subject matter, it just may lend itself to that. It's so many good opinions to be had that it becomes a longer discussion. But sometimes we are on and it's like, okay, I can see why you didn't take the time to watch all 2.5 hours of this episode. I get it. So there's that. So part of it is just me kind of wanting to break things down into little smaller chunks. And like I said, depending on what the political play is, there will be times where I will want to pop on and talk about it. Meech has this thing called a Big Meech Moment where he'll discuss specifically one of these topics. Of course, I'm not trying to bite his rhymes like that, but I do believe I want to put it in some type of little 20, 30-minute segment of that sort when we have those discussions. And I definitely actually want to do more time broadcasting on Instagram. So I do think I will definitely do one of these shows primarily on Instagram and maybe then just bring it over on the rebroadcast to the Facebook and the YouTube. I don't think it's going to be necessarily the opinion broadcast about the politics or whatever, but it definitely will be one of them. Of course, we still will continue to do the sports show. I'm thinking about doing my own sports show at some point. We had a little experimentation with that at one point when I did the Big Buck Sports Report. It would probably be something along those lines where basically just kind of briefly chat about sports. It won't be the in-depth discussion that we have on Game Time Audible. I do definitely want to encourage Mr. Hewley to do his own sports show at some point as well. Because I think, what we do over there at Game Time Audible kind of hinders some of what he wants to do. Remember, he does have the Pure to the Game sports blog that he has on Facebook. Strongly encourage y'all to check it out. But I think I want him to do something similar to that, but like kind of on like a every other day basis, something like that. His quick sports opinion on the big sports news of the day. I would love to see him do that. There are other people in the network who basically I haven't taken the time to really sit down and talk to about what they want to do. These people I have not forgotten about. These are people like a Pride Hunter, people like a JoJo Radford, who I was big advocates of them doing some type of show or broadcast of their own at some point. Definitely want to sit down and have those discussions with them one day. I want to get better at the technical standpoints of this thing. There was a time where I had much time to devote to it because, of course, we were in pandemic and, I was basically just trying to stay busy. But a lot of these things, it takes time to learn them. You have to invest some dollars in some of them. So I definitely want to get into some of that to bring a better quality product. There are some things that my brothers, I should say, Big Meech and Big Red have mentioned that they have in store for 2023 that they want me to be involved in. I definitely want to have some of those conversations and see where I fit into the mix of all of that. I definitely plan on bringing you guys a best of series involving Helena hologram shows. so that basically I could sit down and break down certain shows that she had and what was going on behind the scenes. Kind of talk to some of the people that were on her show because that's definitely what she wanted to do for her season 3, and I kind of want to bring that to life as part of my final tribute to my good friend Helena Hologram. And then, of course, there's other little small ideas I have in mind, but the biggest one that I definitely want to tell you about today is a show I would like to do called All About My Detroit. That is why I have brought you this backdrop this evening. This will definitely be the backdrop to that show when I do it. What will it be about? Obviously, it will be about the city of my birth, the city that I currently live in, Detroit. Detroit, who was experiencing a big comeback, one that was actually kind of spurned during the pandemic because it threw off a lot of what was going to be. There were several businesses that were looking to open during that time. Before the pandemic, some of them have been able to change course and have opened since that time, but several of them, they never got the opportunities to bring what they wanted to bring to the table here. Of course, there's big growth being had downtown, but there's other parts of the city that's experiencing growth and renewal as well. Those are some of the stories that I'd like to bring you on the broadcast. I would like to actually go into some of the smaller businesses, particularly the businesses owned by people of color, minority peoples, and see if they will allow me the opportunity to kind of give them some shine here on the air, talk to them about their business, basically do some advertising for them as well. Part of Nighthawk Network's mission is to bring people together so that, like, say, if you are a person and you are looking for a good place to eat or someone that could work on your lawn or something to that degree, that we can have people that we like, well, look, we advertise these people on the air because they do a good job. Perhaps I can refer them to you and they can help you out from there. Rebuilding Black Wall Street. Yes, absolutely. And I know that is a big mission of yours as well, Bigster, to basically promote people of color and their products and their goods and services. We definitely will continue that mission here. We often talk about the village and what we want to bring back to the village because we definitely have lost that along the way. There was a time where there were places in Detroit where Black people could go and get all types of things done in their community with their people. Those things are less. Now, remember, I'm living in a city that's primarily Black, almost 70, 75%, but only 10% of that city is owned by people of color, including the residencies, unfortunately. We definitely want to do more to promote those people who do actually own properties and things here in the city to help them thrive and to build from there. We do not want to look up one day and the city of Detroit is a lot better, but now it was at the expense of all the people that was once citizens here. And we're now looking at a city that's either half and half or what have you. Keep in mind, I'm definitely for anybody who wants to promote and bring good things to this city, regardless of what color they are. So the peoples like the Dan Gilberts and the Illages of the world, their contributions are not to be forgotten here and are definitely helpful in terms of a lot of things that they are doing in terms of helping the residents keep their households up and not lose their properties and whatnot. So definitely want to acknowledge people like that. But I do want these smaller voices to be heard and seen so that you see parts of my city that you say, okay, I didn't know Detroit was doing that. But I also want to give you an understanding of why it's been tough for our city. We'll also highlight parts of the city that's not so good and tell you why we've gone there. Why are you showing this? Because I need the world to have a better understanding of what goes on here. My job, as I currently do, gives me the opportunity to meet people from a variety of different places across the globe, across these United States that come here to Detroit for business and other things. And many of them have told me, I did not know that Detroit was this way. And it's usually very good, positive comments. And I kind of want to build from that, to have people and encourage them to say, okay, if you got a little time and you want to go someplace a little different, why not Detroit? Why not check us out? Why not see that there are good things going on here in this city that you didn't know about and you should check out for yourself? So that is what I want to encourage by having that program. Again, it's going to be called About My Detroit. And hopefully we will start doing some of those episodes after the winter, because I kind of want to go and take pictures and show videos on some of these locations. I kind of want to possibly do a couple of them live on different locations. If we can find a place here in the city that is willing to house us and let us do a show there maybe once a month or ever so often to kind of not only advertise what's going on there, but to give us a little different feel. I would love that. If you are a business owner, I definitely want to strongly encourage you to reach out to me. In the coming year, we'll not only have a different way of getting in touch with us. In other words, the Nighthawk Network 313 Gmail, we're going to shut that down and have a different Gmail address. But hopefully the website will be up at some point early on 2023. There will be a call-in line that we possibly will use on certain shows. I think that's going to be kind of a members only type of thing. So if you are one of the people on the Nighthawk Information Network page and want to have that number to call in to certain shows or call me in general in regards to getting certain advertising or something done, we want to do that. I definitely want to post more of what you have going on in terms of your business. I'm shout out to people like Sunshine Detroit, basically started by a good friend of mine that I worked with, and she is basically trying to promote her business. I want to promote her. There are the Carrie Cakes. Shout out to her as well. She's going to rebrand and bring her business back out next year. Looking forward to that. Some very good food that she's making over there. And some of you other people that I know that are part of my page that are doing your little small business projects and perhaps could benefit from getting some different or better advertising out there. Keep in mind that there are people in the Nighthawk Network from 26 different states and 4 different countries. And that at any given time, they may come on my page and see what you got going and be interested. I want to shout out people like Rasheen Wood Photography, who is doing good things in the rural Illinois area, and definitely want to do some things to promote her work over there. A good schoolmate of mine that I went to school with over there at Eastern Michigan University. So shout out to her. And to any of you who are members of the network, to all of you who have been part of the broadcast, I definitely want to thank you for your contributions. They are not forgotten. They are very much appreciated. I know I didn't name everybody by name. Keep in mind, we did over 200 something shows in these 3 years in terms of just the Get Off This Lawn and the Game Time Audible. So there's a lot. And then not to mention all the other appearances I've done on some of the other network shows. Keep in mind, my people in the Nighthawk Network, the people that have their own broadcast, I want to shout those people out. People like Big Meech and Dish and Tea. People like Pastor Hayes and his wife, Mrs. Pastor Hayes, and what they have going on and some of their new projects they're working on. Shout out to Aunt Nikki for sure. She's been very busy dealing with a lot of stuff, but she is definitely still a part of this team known as the network. Shout out to, of course, Dr. Marla Facey and what she's doing on her Sister Talk Radio. I want to shout out my cousin Terrence Lake and his Straight Talk Network. Something I have not really mentioned on the air. Definitely a lot of views on his network. So for those of you kind of interested to see what he's got going over there, I encourage you to check out some of his shows. A little difference of views in terms of some of the things he talks about, but definitely coming from a thought-provoking place. So I encourage you to check it out. There were people that we definitely were getting support from or supported by. Shout out to people from the For Show Radio Network over there. My good buddy Dave Bomar, who I went to school with at Eastern, my favorite spades partner to this day. They are no longer broadcasting at this point, but definitely want to shout them out. You know, basically went on the show a couple times over there and had a good time with those brothers. Shout out to people like Will Muhammad and, of course, Coach V for the show that they did on the air. Definitely enjoy kicking it with them. And I still want to point out, Coach B, yeah, that dude Heineke, he still's not worthy. This is Thor's hammer. He still can't lift it, homie. He still ain't ready for prime time. Yeah, I said it. Yeah, I meant it. Go tell that. So there's that. And just some of the other broadcasts that we briefly peeked in on and gained a little interest in. They may have done a broadcast or two or not. Definitely want to shout out to other people on Stan Mason's show who are definitely moving up in the world and doing big things. Like I said, Stan is definitely moving on to his current job. I want to send a shout out to Chief Jim Devlin, who oftentimes checked in on the shows. Never really commented as much, but it was nice to know that he was checking it all out. He is moving on to a bigger position in his town over there in Hewitt, Texas. So shout out to you. Shout out to Big Joe Mosley over there, former Chicago PD, doing big things on his side of the world. And just to all the people that are continuing to live this life and be an influence on it in some way, shape, or form. I want to thank you for your encouragement, your blessings, for your participation and all of that. Get Off This Lawn would have not been the show that it was without you all. That being said, as I said, I've been a little under the weather. My medication's starting to wear off, and it's getting hot in here. So I think I'm ready to shut it down, but do know, people, we will be back. Get Off This Lawn will not be back, but other shows will take its place in some way, shape, or form. Maybe some quickies, maybe something entirely different altogether. It all depends on where my mind can take me and how to formulate these things properly, and some of the things I want to do to broadcast them correctly, bring you the appropriate information, use the technology to my advantage, all of that good stuff. So do know we are still here. And if something of urgency comes on, I still reserve the right to pop on the air and just basically speak my mind. Not quite, like I said, a big Meech moment, just a E-Buck moment, so to speak. And kind of go there until we figure the rest of it out. But we will be back, and we will still have work to do, conversations to be had, things of that nature. Hell, we may even have some renewal of the After Dark edition of Get Off This Lawn Live. It has been in discussions. Again, Miss Shy Glow Hard or Miss Loyal, if you guys are available to discuss at some point, definitely would like to talk to you two young ladies in particular about that particular broadcast. So hit me up. But that being said, we about to get up out of here. Again, thank you all who checked in, who were part of the show. Continue to prosper in life. Continue to do your thing as only you can. Thank you all who always chimed in with your opinions. Thank you to all who didn't. Thank you to the haters, because you inspire me as well. Thank you to the people that showed me love, particularly in my times of hardship. Still going through some of that, y'all. Things are a lot better than they were a few weeks ago, but still got some things to work out along the way. But again, I thank you for all of that. And that being said, we are going to end this particular podcast known as Get Off This Lawn Live. Again, thank you to all who contributed. Definitely want to thank the people in the Nighthawk Network support group that always support me in all endeavors. We don't always talk as much as we once did or used to or even need to, but it's always good to know that you guys are there and you have my back. And of course, I try to have y'all's when I can as well. So that being said, we will see y'all around about these parts. We actually will see you tomorrow on Game Time Audible, but we'll be back. Fear not. This is not the last you will see of this janky mud on the air. So this has been Get Off This Lawn Live. I have been your host, Eric Buckner, and have been glad to do so. One last time, y'all. Here it is. Love y'all. Please be safe this holiday season, and peace.